Hey, good evening, good afternoon, hello, whenever you're watching this.
Yep.
And welcome to This Week in History with Mike and Will. I'm Mike.
I'm Will.
And what we do is Will looks up an event that happened this week in history, does a little research on it, and then he has 1 hour to explain that to me.
Sometimes more research, sometimes less. Depends how much I know about the thing.
That's right. You too can research if you don't know a thing.
And this is our first time in the remodeled studio.
That's true. It's coming along still. There's still
love it.
some stuff we won't show you, but it's coming along.
Coming along. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great. It's fun already.
Yeah.
All right. So today we're going to be doing a topic that Will's not excited about, but I want to learn about. So the rules of this thing is Will teaches me stuff no matter what, even if he doesn't like it.
Yep.
So today we're discussing the Indian Removal Act of 1830. It's already bad in the title. You got 1 hour, Will. Ready?
Got 1 hour. Yep. So yeah, like Mike said, I'm not happy about this one, but I feel it's super important.
Okay.
Very important because of everything leading up to it, everything that happened after, and a particularly upsetting Supreme Court ruling that is still law of the land.
Okay.
That predates it, that we're going to talk about.
I want to start by saying I don't know like the 1800s in American history.
Not a lot.
Kind of vague.
Yeah.
Like I know the Civil War was in there. And that was the big,
Yep.
that kind of
That's
took
a
up
big
all.
one.
That kind of took up all the.
That takes up most
All
of
the
people's
information.
knowledge. They're like,
Yeah.
well, that happened in the 1860s, right? Yep.
Yep. But plenty else
There's
happened.
stuff before that, and this is a lot of formation of like modern American establishments. So like this is when the Supreme Court really starts. This like early case law is what lays the groundwork for future laws.
Oh, okay.
And it is
Precedent. That's
it,
the right word.
yes, it sets precedent for almost everything. Like
Oh.
we're going to talk about laws that are discussed now in law school, like for first year law, discussing like property law and also why it is bad.
Property law.
Yep. Well, not property law, but this specific ruling is
Oh, okay.
very unpleasant.
Sure.
So yeah, what we're going to talk about is the Indian Removal Act, which the very name of it is offensive.
Already, currently, but
to
that's what
quite
it
a few
is.
people.
What it
That
is called.
What it is literally called.
Yes.
And what this is a legal precedent laid down that gives the president the power, the president
Of the United
of
States.
the United States, the power to say, "Get off my land,"
Oh.
to native people.
Now, at this point, our land,
Our land.
was not the United States as we currently know
Not even close. We
It
owned up
was-
to the Mississippi River.
it.
That's it.
As late as the 1830s, we only.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess I didn't know what I was doing.
Beyond that is considered Indian territory. Now, we started establishing territories in that part of the country around then, but the Indian Removal Act kicks every native person who doesn't follow specific guidelines out of the eastern United States, and they have to move across the Mississippi River.
Okay. So out of place that we were already occupying there.
We are
were
occupying
there,
this
and we were-
land slowly. So the background of this is they wanted cultural assimilation of the native people. So we have to go very far back to people from Europe land here.
Hi everyone, we're from Europe.
They move into land already lived upon by the natives. Now some of the
Oh, I'm
natives,
sorry, were you here?
Yeah, some of the native populations have a concept of personal land ownership, but typically not.
Okay.
They're too nomadic. They're to try to nail down all natives is part of the core root of the racism that builds on this.
Oh.
Because there are at any time more than 500 individual nations. It's like going
Okay.
into Europe and saying you're all the same,
Right.
but even bigger. Like
Yeah,
more disparate groups.
Yeah.
But for the most part, so this is a generalization but not a negative stereotype, is that the concept of land ownership by the individual is not a thing. There's territories controlled by the tribe or the clan, but not, I own this 5 foot by 5 foot swath of garden.
So when a group of people come in and have that mentality, I guess it would be hard to.
It's really hard to
Stop
you don't,
them.
Yeah, you don't understand it.
Right.
So you're like, oh, this is our land. It's like, yeah, sure, that's your land. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this is our land. This is your land. It's fine. It's
Oh.
whatever. There's a massive misunderstanding between the cultures,
Yeah.
and this causes immediate problems because in Europe, mine. This is mine. This is yours. This is mine. This is yours.
I am trying to think of a comparable metaphor for that, and I can't.
We don't really have one because
That
it
is-
is such a foreign concept to
Right.
people of European descent. And I mean, in many cultures across the world,
Yeah.
this is a foreign concept. But for a lot of these groups, they are nomadic. They move where the herds are, they
Yeah.
move where the food is, and then they cycle back. And that way they're kind of living within nature, not trying to dominate nature. It's a very different approach. Whereas Europeans are,
And sadly, that's why they lose.
that's why they lose. Yep.
Oy.
Yep.
Hey, everyone, how about we just share things? Or how about I just keep all the things?
Yep. And when you have a group of people who have more advanced technology, guns and steel, and germs, there's a fantastic book written called Gun, Germs, and Steel.
Guns.
That basically talks about how the way the natives were killed was a combination of those three things, because they did not have the diseases that the Europeans brought, so they had no way of building an immunity.
Yep.
We didn't have vaccinations back then, and if they did, they weren't giving them to the natives. And it just, I mean, smallpox probably killed more people than guns did, but guns sure helped,
Sure.
because guns make killing people very, very.
Well, and guns
very,
are a little more specific
Very
than
easy.
smallpox.
Yeah.
Smallpox is for everyone.
It'll kill all of you.
Yeah.
It's indiscriminate.
Guns require some
Action.
action.
Yes, same with swords.
There you go.
And the natives didn't, most of them, like, they didn't have, like, steel
Yeah.
like the Europeans had. And they had, like, metalworking. That was a thing. But, like, crucible steel, which was actually invented in Ethiopia before it was invented anywhere else.
Oh.
So that's a cool thing that I'm going to try to look up the details of that. But they had forged steel, which actually helped them build an empire in Ethiopia that lasted until today-ish. Ethiopia has had relatively the same borders, which is kind of cool.
Okay.
But anyway,
Another
continent, but also tribal resistance against
Sure.
European imperialism.
Ah.
So that's
They were a little more
relation.
easier to resist. with
Yes,
steel.
yes, because they had steel. They actually, I think, are the only place that resisted mostly
There you go.
imperialism. So the natives, though, they have these. First of all, it's totally different groups. Some of these groups consist of hundreds of thousands of people in different communities, in established land areas. They have large settlements. They have permanent settlements. They go to war. They take slaves. Concept of slavery.
Just like humans everywhere.
The concept of slavery, however, amongst natives, and this is important because it changes once colonists show up.
Oh.
The concept of slavery is not a racial inferiority. They see an ethnic inferiority in that we beat your culture, we win,
Oh, okay.
and you are folded into us, much like the Romans did. The Romans did not have a racial inferiority thing. It was just everybody's society sucks compared to Rome.
Okay.
There's a difference.
There is a
right?
difference, I guess,
They
yes.
don't see these as non-humans. Also, the natives had in different cultures they had matrilineal handing over of land. So that means if you were connected to the mother, then that's how everything was passed down from generation to generation. So if you're the
Okay.
child of a local mother and a slave, you're part of the tribe fully,
Oh, okay.
because the mother is the bloodline that connects you. It's very similar to like Judaism and a lot of other cultures
Sure.
where it's whoever the mother has the kids with. It actually makes a lot more sense
Well, yeah.
if you think about it, as far as purity to bloodline type stuff, because
Yeah.
dads can just kind of go all over the place.
Yeah.
But the mother is the one who actually makes the child and all of this stuff. So that was their view. It didn't matter who the father was. If the mother was part of the group, bam, you're in. So cool. There were ways of working yourself into society if you were considered like a slave. Also, the term slave was not really used
Okay.
because you weren't not a person. You were just captured, a prisoner.
Working for us now.
You were working for us now. In some of the cultures, they had a, what do they call it? Like a spiritual debt. So if your family, let's say your family went to war with this family, or our tribe goes to war with your tribe,
Sure.
and you kill the father of the family.
I do.
Yes, you kill the father of this family, and you're captured.
Oh.
You get tortured and beaten to the extent that they feel the debt is paid.
Oh. Okay.
Like the suffering and loss of losing the father.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you are required to take upon yourself the father's role. You must give back to the society. You must support the family, provide for the children, do the hunting, and then go to war again if the tribe has to go to war.
Okay.
And that's how they handled their issues.
So that's how I'd be a slave. But I'm
Yeah,
not.
yep.
not
And then
a slave,
once you went through that what they called like a spiritual cleansing, which not everybody survived.
It doesn't sound
It's
easy.
harsh. But if you made it through, then you're a full member of the tribe then.
Oh,
And you lost your, prisoner slave status. You're no longer a pariah. You're
Yeah.
a full member of the tribe. That's the rule. You're
Okay.
part of the group. You're in the group. You're good to go now.
All right.
So this is their philosophy regarding slavery.
Sure.
That it's not. It would be codified as how we see slavery of I am forced to work for you for no pay.
Yes. It also sounds more reactive versus institutionalized.
Yeah, they weren't going out going, we're going to take these people, make them work on our land. They were.
It's more like these are kind of the spoils of war.
We fought.
if you will.
Yep, we fought, and that's very similar to old school European slavery and slavery in other continents where it's we fought, you lost.
There we
The
go.
alternative is we kill you or you work for us now.
You get to work. Yeah.
So that was their view on these things. Now the Europeans come. And
With some different ideas.
They have now evolved their level of slavery
Oh.
to chattel slavery.
Well,
Other people from another continent who don't look like them, who don't share their culture, and they don't count as people.
ain't that just the capitalist way?
And immediately after encountering this, the natives go,
I don't care for that.
I guess we'll do that.
Oh. Okay.
And what they start doing is if one tribal group goes to war with another nation and they take slaves or prisoners, they then sell those prisoners to the colonists in a way to say, well, we don't even have your people anymore. They do. You should go fight the white guys.
Huh.
It did not work very well.
No, I don't imagine
Obviously,
it would.
none of their plans and efforts did work very well.
Apparently
They
not.
were eventually conquered and
Yeah.
butchered, and all sorts of things happened. But I just want to paint the picture is often given of there's an old, outdated term that is used that people loathe, and it's considered the noble savage, where all natives were, these noble people who just lived off the land and loved the land, and natives hate this too. Like every native I've ever talked to hates this trope that we're all just pacifists living on the dirt and
Right.
loving this, and it's not like that. They're all very different. They have wars, they have struggles, they have political rivalries and family issues, but they handle their things very, very differently than how the Europeans do.
They
It's
also
a totally
didn't-
different culture.
Didn't write things down. Yes.
They did
Correct?
not.
More oral tradition.
They did not. There's no literacy
boy.
in the majority
See,
of natives.
I could see that being a problem right there already. If people coming in, oh well, we've had a vast, a wonderful history, or history of
Prove it.
doing what are things? Yeah, you write it down?
No.
Well, doesn't matter then. We wrote ours down.
It's very much like the Eddie Izzard joke
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
do you have a
Do you
flag?
have- yes.
No. No flag, no country.
Exactly.
If only we'd known the rules.
Didn't write it down.
And that is literally what they do. They say, well, you don't have a language, so too bad. No, but we're speaking a different language. Doesn't matter. You didn't write it down.
Got them on the fine print.
Yes.
Or lack of
so
fine
this
print.
is the situation there where there's all these different groups. The Europeans come in and basically go, all of you are different than us and therefore are the same as each other. And they treat them all the same.
Oh, because you've not written down. We're not
don't
going to
know.
bother.
Now, it doesn't matter
learning.
that they dress differently. They speak a different language. They have different songs and dances and stories. And
it sounds
even
like-
their structures are different. Their chosen weapons, whether they ride horses or not, like nothing.
Sounds like you're making me do a lot of research.
Exactly. So they just go, you're all the same. You look different than us. You're all the
Yeah.
same. You're darker. You have darker hair. Meh. Same
I've just gone from one group of people. I go to another. I didn't have to cross an ocean. You must be the same people.
None of you wear shoes. They're like, our group does. We live on rocks.
Yeah.
So- oh. None of you wear clothes. We do. It's cold. Nope.
All
You
right.
all wear buckskin and go in, dugout canoes.
Ignorance.
We don't.
Ignorance does travel faster than knowledge.
Yes.
Ooh, that's a good phrase, Mike.
Phrase. I think that if that's not coined, coin it. Put it on a
Write
thing.
that
Put that
down.
down. Ignorance travels faster than knowledge. I like that. Because, ignorance, you just go, this is what I think. This is what I believe.
Yep.
And then knowledge, you have to work for it. Which is why this show exists. So that's this disparate groups. We don't have to go into all of the European history details because we've talked a ton about those.
Enough about them.
It's not that they don't matter. It's just that We haven't done anything
That's right.
about natives really, so go watch the other ones and learn about Europe and how different Europe is.
Sure. There you go.
There, because now we're going to talk about this.
Okay, good.
Now, so colonialism happens, and it is, in some cases, it's peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
There is assimilation between the two groups. There is trade. There is, some give and take. They work together. Some Europeans work with natives against some of the natives' rivals who are natives, or they help the Europeans fight other Europeans. And there's some kind of give and take. It's still very much we invaded your land and we live here now.
Okay.
But
we'll be nice about it.
there is still some cooperation, some understanding. Some things that the Europeans bring are awesome and they go over really well.
For instance,
this whole concept of writing is kind of fascinating
Sure.
to some of the native folk. We're going to talk a little bit. I'll do a sidebar on him right now because he's fantastic. There is a thing called the Cherokee Syllabary. And what that is basically, how do we write a language when never having written one? This concept doesn't exist.
how do we start?
And this man named Sequoyah, he was born in 1770. They don't know the specific date. He died in 1843.
Probably because they didn't write it down.
They didn't write it down. Wasn't super important. They just kind of guessed. He was illiterate. Completely illiterate.
Yeah.
But he found out about this concept of writing stuff down. And he thought, we should do that. I'm going to do that.
Someone should do. Yeah.
And he did. He wrote down the Cherokee language. He created it.
Oh.
And in written form.
Based off of.
Off of like ideas and concepts that he'd seen and heard.
Yeah.
But he just wrote it like phonetically, and he's like, this symbol means is basically like writing English.
Okay.
Having never heard it, having never seen it.
Did he create an alphabet of
He created
forms,
an
or-
alphabet. He created a full form of the language to the extent that 21 known writing systems in 65 languages across North America, Africa, and Asia use that as their basis.
Well done, Sequoyah.
So
Great.
this guy's amazing.
Yeah.
He's considered a polymath, so one of those annoying guys who's just good at all the things. Mm-hmm. He's an educator. He's a writer. He had I think it was the Cherokee Phoenix was his newspaper he created. Like, this guy was just kind of the guy, and he really was great at realizing these people are here to stay, and we are here to stay. Ergo, we should have some cross-pollination of ideas and cultures and see how that works.
I think there was a chunk of time then they thought the Europeans maybe
They might just go
they
away.
might just leave.
There was a serious chunk, I'm positive, where they're like, there was, welcome visitors, welcome different people, have fun. Oh, you brought disease and death.
Oh.
No thank you, we don't want any more.
And you're staying.
Others were like, okay, we don't believe in individual land, but this is our land. Get off the land. Murder. And then more people showed up and just started shooting folk. And it's been very rough
Yeah.
since people showed up in like 1604, I think is when Jamestown was founded.
Okay.
So it's been not great ever since then. And they probably have heard rumors from the South of those
sure.
Spanish guys, not very nice. And the Spanish have been in Florida for a while at this point.
Okay.
So
yeah. Florida's connected to the rest of
Florida's
America.
connected to the rest of America. Since the 1500s, the Spanish were in Florida.
Okay. So all right.
So they make it sound like America was first colonized by the Brits in the 1600s with the settlement of Jamestown in Virginia. And that's considered like the core foundational chunk of American culture and society grows from there. But the Spanish have already started living on the coasts around the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. You've got the French in the northern parts. The Vikings were there in the 11th century, at least, in Newfoundland. So there's this claim of, this is the first time people were here is nonsense.
No, it's just that we now speak English.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
we'll call
So
that
that's
as
like the
start.
entire core concept is these people believe that, these colonists believe, well, since we're here now and we have the power, we are the sole authority. And so everything based on any future decision is rooted in that belief. Okay? So this concept of cultural assimilation of their culture that they've brought with them is proposed originally by George Washington as a matter of law. And it says that
Come on, George.
they are forced to become Christian
Ooh, George.
English is required to be written and spoken.
Okay.
In some cases, exclusively.
Ooh, that's rough.
The Cherokee language was eventually allowed because of what Sequoyah did.
Because they did.
Because he
okay,
wrote
yeah.
it down, and
Yeah.
people were like, "Oh, it's," but it was
Well,
more
that's
like
a different story.
It was the equivalent of, "Oh, that's cute.
That's nice.
Look at them; they're trying so hard."
Mm-hmm.
Monogamous heterosexual marriage was required.
Required
Apparently,
to get married was required, or that if you were going to get married,
if you were
it
going to
had-
be in a relationship, it had to be heterosexual. It had to be
headed
monogamous.
toward marriage.
And it had to be Christian.
Okay.
So apparently, by that language, there are homosexual relationships in tribal society. So it didn't just pop up. This is not a creation of the Greeks or something.
You got to choose the thing you're going to be irate about.
I'm irate. I told you, I'm mad about literally everything I read about today.
Sure.
I am mad.
But for right now, Pride Month will take care of
It is
itself.
Pride Month.
We'll
It's
let that
June
take care of
now.
itself, and let's focus on the other
Okay,
atrocities.
so I'm just saying that was apparently a thing.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's not cool. We don't do that.
Yeah. No, I think that's been a thing since a long time.
Forever.
Since
As
always.
long as there has been life on this planet,
Yes.
there has been homosexuality. So moving on, Will's little temper flare up. This is not the last one. This is not the last one. Wait till I get to... just wait.
Okay.
Okay. So that was a requirement, is that if you're going to be in a relationship, it has to be marriage, and it has to be man and woman, period. No bigamy, no polygamy, no men and men, no women and women. This is the rule.
Okay.
So they're saying your culture doesn't matter there. They also mandate individual ownership of property and land.
To which the natives were like, what?
Yeah, I mean, they're starting to learn the concept because they keep seeing it.
Yeah.
Like, this is why you have like these apocryphal stories of like, they bought this for a box of beads.
Yeah.
Because the natives are like, sure?
Bought what?
Yeah, they're like, we wish to own this land. And like, sure. What does that mean?
I don't know. Nice
Because a
beads.
lot of them didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
Some had like the concept of land, and also there's a language barrier, and there certainly was misdirection and lying
Oh, yes.
and saying something like, oh, we just want to stay here. Here's some tribute.
I'm sure all the transactions were above board, just like all real estate and financial transactions are above the board current day.
Yep, checks out. I don't have anything right with it. Checks out. But yes, so you obviously you've got these people are used to like trade and stuff.
Yeah.
This is not a foreign concept. Anytime there's cultures, you have trade,
Yeah.
you have communication.
Anytime you make things.
Or you just have war, and those people don't last long. Like if you just every time you meet somebody, you hit them with a stick.
Oh.
Those people die out really quick. They all do. So they're used to the concept of trade. So I'm sure part of this was based on the idea of similar to leasing land.
Okay.
We just want to stay here. Here's some stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a symbolic offering, kind of like the Maltese Falcon was.
Oh, sure.
With, we control this island, here's a bird. And they're like, sure.
Nope.
As long as you're being above board and cool, you have the island. For the native population, they were probably like, oh, yeah, you can stay there for this cool trinket you gave us. That's neat, yeah. And we'll just keep having this same relationship.
Yeah.
Why do you keep bringing more people? What are those big metal things you keep unloading and put on top of the walls? Those are guns? Those sound interesting. Oh, they just kill lots of people, really? Okay. Well, this deal isn't the same as what we thought it was. We would like you to stop. Oh, no, we can't.
Too late now.
Okay, now
Yeah.
you've got germs and guns and disease and steel. And we're all going to die. Okay. So that is the concept that's being pushed on this. This creates, especially in the southern United States. So in the northern United States, the wars between native people and settlers are much more intense. We're not going to get super into that. In northern states, they're actually they're more like traditional land war.
Oh.
Like these people don't get on well at all in a lot of cases. You've got like the Mohican who are fiercely independent warrior folk, but you also have, which this makes the problem worse, is you have French colonies and British colonies. The French are fighting the British and they're looking for allies. So each kind of pick, okay, I want this tribe, I want this tribe, I want this tribe, I want this tribe, and they get stuck along in the fighting. So what happens in the north is very different than what happens in the south, so most of our stuff is going to revolve around southern tribal groups.
Okay.
Because it's different. Because a lot of the southern tribal groups said, fine, we'll do the thing.
Okay.
We'll learn English.
We'll
We'll have the traditional sense of marriage from you people. We'll do this whole non-marital sex, which is totally bogus because we know full well that throughout European history, everybody's having sex, and this is not a you only have sex in marriage. So it's very hypocritical.
Sure.
And then also this whole land ownership stuff is very hypocritical, where it's, I own this land, but I also own this, but you kind of own it, but I kind of own it. They're expecting, it's very much the do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
They have a higher expectation for the native population than they have for their own people. So you get what is offensively called the 5 civilized tribes.
Ooh, the 5 civilized tribes.
Now, the majority of natives despise this.
Yes.
But there is still an annual meeting of the 5 civilized nations. They actually refer to it as that. But it's kind of the former civilized nations. Like they don't... It's just to say this is what we were called,
right,
and this is what separates us from these other groups, but this is not necessarily how we feel.
Okay.
Because the entire concept of what is civilized is totally based in Eurocentrism.
Right.
It is the concept of you're only civilized if you act like we Europeans do, which is nonsense.
So are these just the larger tribes, or the ones that more adhered to the new rules?
They followed the rules.
Okay.
They followed the rules. So the 5 civilized tribes are the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, the Creek, also called the Muskogee, the Seminole, and the original Cherokee Nation. Cherokee Nation has shifted considerably. Everybody thinks the Cherokee are like a Western tribe. They're not. They are originally from...
Were they just pushed west?
They were just pushed west. All of these people, except the Seminole.
Where they go? Okay.
Which comes into this pretty fantastically.
Okay.
So the main thing that this starts to revolve around, originally, there's war and there's clashing.
Yeah.
Especially in the north. Like there's war and there's clashing, and eventually people just go, this is stupid, and they start to kind of integrate with each other. And they're like, fine. In the south, they shift from war to land ownership. So the natives own huge swaths of land, and the locals want it.
The local...
The new locals.
The new locals.
The new locals,
Sure.
not the natives, but
Right.
the white settlers living there want the land. Also, interestingly enough, so what separates these 5 groups too is they all follow Christianity. They all have a central government. They all have English as the main language, and they read and write. They have market participation, so they're doing all the trade and stuff.
Okay.
They have written constitutions. They have intermarriage with whites, and chattel slavery is adopted.
But
That was a requirement to become a full American. Was you had to own black people.
it had... Oh, okay.
That was the requirement.
All right.
Okay, especially in
So
the South.
surely, having followed all those rules,
Should be fine, right?
they'll be welcomed into the new society that we're forming.
It was, except a former United States Supreme Court justice, last name of Johnson, decided he wanted to buy up a lot of land.
Just him?
He was one of them. So he brings a case to the Supreme Court.
He's a Supreme Court justice?
He's a former justice.
Oh, so he was. It's always like, all right, I know. How
But
this
he
works.
retired due to like health issues.
Sure.
So a few years later, and it obviously has no say in anything.
Well, I assume at least he retired.
He's buddies with every single guy.
He at least retired, though.
Yep.
So that he
So
can...
it's fine.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm
He has no say.
totally
He wasn't
impartial
one of the
over
first
there.
Supreme Court justices and then determined all case law and
Hey,
set up who comes
you look
after.
at all my background
Exactly.
that I've done? Look what I'm doing now.
Exactly. So the guy who's the Supreme Court justice in charge at this time is a fellow named Marshall. We'll get into him another time.
Marshall.
But there's kind of this, they call it the Marshall Doctrine,
Marshall Doctrine.
which almost exclusively sets up a white Christian supremacy over all, male specifically, over all other people, as grounded precedent and case law for all future laws passed in the United States. Anytime we've tried to overcome an existing law, it's almost exclusively because Marshall said, this is what's going on.
Is that the fella where martial law comes from?
It might. I don't think so. Because, martial law, martial comes from Mars.
Yeah.
Mars is the Roman god of war.
Yeah.
Martial law means military law.
Okay.
So, no, I don't think so.
But there was also another guy named Thurgood Marshall.
He might actually be related. For all
They might be related,
might actually
but he was a
be
Supreme Court justice as well, but a more recent one.
I might have to look it up, but I would not be surprised.
That's
'cause
not this guy, right?
They're
Sorry.
Southerners, and they tend to keep the families in power.
Well, I mean, it's good to know that we brought nepotism over as well.
Yeah, we definitely did that. That was a good colonial thing. Not to say that natives didn't have nepotism. I'm sure they
Sure,
did.
right.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
So there's this court case where Johnson wants to buy land from the natives, but he doesn't want to pay them fair rate.
Why would you?
Why would you? If you could get it for cheaper, why
Sure.
would you not get it for more? I mean, that's capitalism, baby.
Right.
Before that was even a concept, this is what they're going for. So he brings the case to the Supreme Court because he knows them against a fellow named it's pronounced Macintosh, so the Macintosh apples. But it's M''Intosh, who is a local civilized native fella who owns a big chunk of land.
Oh.
And Johnson's family has been leasing this land. They allegedly they're leasing this, and he says I shouldn't have to lease it. I should just own it because I live here.
Yes. I mean, I can hear.
And the native guy's like, "No, I own it.
I live here.
I live here. My family's lived here since before your family came across the ocean. Well,
And Johnson says,
did you
"Well,
write it down?"
I live here now, and I wrote it down." Right?
Yep. So what winds up happening is the Supreme Court deliberates on this. It is a unanimous decision that white people cannot buy land from the natives because the natives don't own it. By virtue of colonialism,
That sounded like a good deal at first, and then it switched.
then it
The second half of the
switched.
sentence.
Yep.
You cannot buy land from natives. Okay, good. We agree on that.
Because
they
they
don't
don't
own it, so
own
you
it.
can't. You just got to take it.
They have absolutely
So
no claim to the land they've lived on for tens of thousands of years because they were successfully colonized. And because of that, it means that they used a term like radical ownership, meant that they have absolutely no sovereignty over the land, but the ruling body does. So once they basically accepted the terms of living there, that meant that they lost all their rights to their land.
So, in a sense, the Supreme Court declared a victory over
All natives.
but also then preemptive future victory over
Yep.
everyone.
Everywhere we go, we own it.
Yeah.
Yep.
How many people on the Supreme Court at that time?
I think it was 9. Might have been 5. I can't recall.
All right.
I didn't study. I got too mad and I just didn't want to read any more about
Sure.
it. But Marshall was the head justice, and there were 5 guys. I think 5 guys. And
Probably
they were
guys.
all old white guys who
Yep.
owned land and had money.
Strange that.
Okay, all Christian, all had, and they used religion to justify this. Of
course
you
they
know,
did.
these are a
Of
savage,
course they did.
benighted people who don't know any better. They're just gonna ruin the land anyway, and this is for their own good, which is objectively not true.
Right.
Because casualty rates skyrocketed after white people showed
Well, how
up.
can we know? They didn't write it down before.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe
But
it was worse
you know,
before
you
we
can
were here.
find their graves and go, okay, so they had 5 people die
Yeah, I guess
last year.
I guess
and
you
this
could.
year they had 6,000 people.
Yeah, I guess. But who's got time for that research? We got land
We got land to take.
to
It's
take
ours.
care
It's
of. We are to take care of. Tend
to
to.
steward.
Yes.
To steward we must steward the
You
land.
obviously don't know what you're doing. We got this. We sailed across an ocean.
It's like in Blazing Saddles when it's for the best. They're such children. When satire actually hits home,
Yeah.
that's problematic. But that is almost exactly how they view it. Is the natives don't really count as people. They don't own any land.
No.
And the natives who live on land and have been farming it and been living by these rules
Yeah.
are like, wait, what? But you said if we followed the rules, and we're not talking about 5 acres. At this point, the Cherokee own 11 million acres of land.
Yeah.
by treaty and rule. And then the government says, no, you don't.
We've changed our mind.
We've changed the rules.
I've altered the plan.
Yep. Yes.
Pray I don't
Pray I
alter
do
it.
not alter it further. Yes, exactly. So that's Johnson versus
That was the
McIntosh.
bad guys in Star Wars.
Yeah, just so you know.
Just so you reference.
When you're on the same side that the space fascists are on,
All right.
don't maybe be there. So that lays down, that changes the game.
Yeah, sure
That
does.
completely changes the game because at a foundational, constitutional, legal level now, no native owns any land unless they buy it really fast. So they start having to partition their own land and sell it. And this is going to shift things in a little bit. So that was passed in 28 February 1823. So just a few short years before the Indian Removal Act.
Yes.
Now things start to ramp up.
Oh, sure. Now that we have been given permission.
Now we've been given permission. So during this time, there's a fellow by the name of Andrew Jackson.
Hey, I've heard of him. He's
Jack-
on our money.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is. Andrew Jackson was a soldier. He spent most of his life as a soldier. He fought in the War of 1812, where he was a general. He fought against native tribes, specifically the Cree. I think he fought against the Seminole. He fought a lot. He was also a duelist. He was not above dueling people. In one of his duels, I forget the name of the man he fought, he knew the guy he was famed for being a duelist. And this guy wrote an article in a newspaper basically calling Jackson out. And Jackson responded by saying, all right, let's do this. Let's fight.
I like it.
Let's dance. So they go to the duel, and the man is renowned as a crack shot. So Jackson says, I'm not as good of a shot as he is. This is not a sword duel. This is a pistol duel.
Okay.
So these tend to be much more abrupt.
Sure,
and
they're
final.
quicker, I imagine.
But there are, usually rules. There's gentlemanly ways of handling this.
Yes.
There's like the famous Hamilton and
shooting
Burr
the air,
duel,
everything and-
where Hamilton fired up and Burr shot Hamilton,
Yeah.
which is considered one of the most egregious, awful, offensive ways of a duel panning out in
Or a
history.
mistake. Whoops.
And that's what they've tried to paint it as.
That's true.
Well, Burr maybe didn't mean to do it, or Hamilton wasn't wearing his glasses, so he just
Yeah.
missed because he sucked. But it was
Who knows?
everybody else who was there was like, no, he shot like straight up in the air, which is a stupid idea because gravity, bullets coming down somewhere. And then Burr shot him and killed him.
That's a different duel.
This
This
is
duel,
different
though?
This duel, Jackson's prepared to take a bullet. His thinking is, because they do the walk, 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 turn, fire.
Yeah.
His plan is, I'll let him turn and fire and wait to shoot. Because the rule is, once you've fired, the other guy still gets to shoot.
Okay.
But he can take as long as he wants.
Oh, okay.
So Jackson turns and gets shot in the chest. The bullet embeds itself just above his heart.
Ooh, risky move.
And then he
Andy.
very calmly and casually stares the guy down, raises his pistol, and shoots him dead.
I mean, it's pretty badass.
It's pretty badass, but everybody there goes, what? You just murdered the guy. You were supposed to turn and shoot. It's like, there's this stupidly, like, gentlemanly rule of Tennessee duels where they were both supposed to shoot, but how dare he take his time? It's like, if you both killed each other, that was respectable and gentlemanly.
Yeah.
But you took your time, sir, and aimed, even with a bullet lodged in your chest, which was never removed.
Oh,
They couldn't remove it. So we're talking a musket ball, which is at least like a 60 caliber round. So that's just over half an inch in diameter,
that's something.
lodged in his chest. And it's not his only bullet lodged in him. Later on, during in the War of 1812, I think it was the War of 1812. He gets shot again and has another bullet in him that he can't get out. Apparently, they would grind on the bones when he moved, so you could hear his creaking and clicking of musket balls in his body, which is kind of terrifying.
It is kinda terrifying.
Kind of terrifying. So he's kind of this,
Yeah.
like, this is an actual, like, soldier, warrior type dude who's, that's how he sees, like, everything, though. And he does not believe in, like, half measures. So he starts to get involved in purchasing land. He is a slave owner of the highest order,
As were most of them.
as were most gentlemen, especially in the South. He's from Tennessee, so
Yep.
that's a huge thing. If you have money, you have slaves.
Sure.
Like
That's how you have money.
That's how you have money,
I imagine.
because you just buy them.
Yeah.
But he said slavery is morally acceptable as long as we take a paternal approach to these savage people,
Oh, well, that's nice.
because they don't know any better.
Right. He's just trying to help.
And as long as we give them trinkets to,
Sure.
feed, as long as you feed them and clothe them, let them hunt for themselves, it's totally fine. However, he's also recorded as having increased, he said, he had escaped slaves, and he said, I will give you an extra $10 for every 100 lashes you give the person before you give me them back, up to 300 lashes.
Wow.
So he encouraged whipping, which is drawing blood almost every time if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
300 whips across the back, you're probably going to die from shock.
That's for the slaves he was purchasing? And
If they escaped.
Oh,
if
if
his
they escaped.
if his
Yeah.
slaves escaped, that's how he dealt with them.
Yeah, that's-
And there are still people in the South like, yeah, you shouldn't have escaped.
Yeah. Well,
Because that
yeah.
goes back like that. So bear in mind, this is the guy who is the moral leader. He pretends that he is this, everything is based on God and faith and religion.
He's on our money.
And he's on our money. A pretty common one. He's on the $20 bill.
Yeah.
This is this guy.
We just redesigned those too.
Yeah, we did. And they were talking about maybe replacing him with Harriet Tubman, an actual,
Nah.
abolition. No,
Nah.
nope.
Just keep him on there.
It gets
Don't want to offend him.
worse.
Yes.
It gets worse. So he almost dies at one point from his body just gives up on him in 1822.
Sure, I would.
Yeah. And he's got these bullets in him. He's coughing up blood frequently.
Okay.
He rallies. He gets better.
Strange how crappy people always seem to.
If he had just died, what happens next would probably not have happened. So,
Maybe something more terrible would happen, Will.
maybe.
Maybe this is the best of scenarios.
Maybe. I mean, the guy who followed him is really bad too.
Okay,
Van Buren, who I think he's considered one of the worst presidents of all time.
Oh.
So, Jackson, he runs for office. He loses the first time. He's very bitter about it. He loses to John Quincy Adams, who's related to the great man John Adams.
Yeah.
And he's old. John Quincy is.
Yes.
He's considered a very meh president.
Okay.
He passed laws to protect the natives.
Oh.
The Georgians, of the state, would literally just move in and kick them out of the property, forcibly. There was a bit where Adams got federal troops to go down to Georgia to protect the natives from this, and the militia showed up and he just said, never mind, the natives are not worth dying for. He said he said that the Indians aren't worth a civil war, I think is what his reply was.
Ha! Funny.
Funny.
You should say that.
Yeah, funny.
In a couple of years.
A different group of brown people
Boy.
are worth the Civil War. Yeah, so he said it wasn't worth it at the time because we're a fledgling nation and
Sure.
he wasn't going to upend his daddy's work. So,
Okay. Good thing we had that well-organized militia in Georgia.
Yep. And people would say, well, that was what they were for, is to fight the tyrannical government so that we could oppress the natives and take their land. So he tried to do some stuff, but then Jackson eventually runs again. He wins in 28. So now he's president. And his top priority is removing Indians from their land.
That's his
That
number
is
one.
Number one goal.
Did he run on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a big part of his campaign. Was
Okay.
we're ending this situation. We were not going to have these people here anymore.
Vote for me.
So this is, in addition to all the different groups that have settled things and literally buried the hatchet. That's a concept of, we will bury the hatchet. We will take this weapon and bury it in the ground, and that means we're done fighting. But, oh no. Now they're going after the 5 civilized tribes who have cities. They have towns. They're integrated into society.
They were doing the
They did
things.
everything they were supposed to do.
Yeah.
and it wasn't good enough.
No.
Now,
Because they still have the land.
The Seminole are fairly new to this. The Seminole, being Floridians, Florida was not purchased from Spain until 1821. So they have their own rules they're used to, which was basically, you guys do what you want. Nobody wants to live where you live anyway. It's the Everglades. It sucks.
Okay.
And they're like, good.
Fine, we like it here.
We like it here.
Get out of
This
our
is where we're
swamp.
staying. We're fine here.
Okay.
Meh.
Harumph.
Harumph. I think the Seminole invented the American harumph.
Probably.
Harumph.
We'll check on that.
The white people tried to take
We'll
that,
we'll
that
research
was
that.
that's cultural appropriation. It was harumph, but I think the Seminoles were the first to go, good, harumph. But they had an agreement with the Spanish. Now, of course, when the Americans took it, that deal went away.
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, no, you have to move. And they went, what? Yeah, you have to move. We want everybody out.
But we like it here.
But we live here.
And we live here.
Now, the Seminole have a very complex history. They are considered like a fringe group and splitters from the Creek. They're not. They are considered like renegades.
Oh.
They like left the Creek Nation. They went off and did their own thing. So culturally, they're fairly similar, but in a lot of ways, they're very, very different. And they're like, no, we're not part of you anymore. They are approached and told, well, you can just move back west where you used to live. And they're like, if we move back in with the Creek, they will kill us because we're renegades to them. It'd be like winning the Civil War and getting your own independent country and then being told, no, you have to move back in with the side that you beat.
Ooh.
Or split from.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
Yeah.
The white people involved in this are like, I don't get it. Which is nonsense because they have had the same exact thing happen to them.
Oh, they got it.
Europeans
They
have
understood.
always had this everybody's had this kind of stuff in their history happen where it was like, yeah, we had this fight with these guys and now we don't want to live next to them because it's really, really tense and they will try to kill us. And you guys clearly don't want to help us. And there's more of them than us, so we'll just die. We're not moving. So this is building up. So now, 28 May 1830, Jackson proposes the Indian Removal Act, where it gives him unilateral control to say, get out. All natives who do not perfectly subscribe to their rules,
Which are constantly changing, I imagine.
constantly changing, have to move west of the Mississippi. Now, you can move voluntarily, or we will make you move.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the five groups interact, and there were several other groups that were involved in this that weren't considered civilized. There was a Potawatomi, who we know of.
Oh, yeah.
And there were the Kickapoo. There were, I think there were 4 or 5 other major ones. But there are probably a bunch of little groups that were moved as well. Because you got to think about, like, this is the Ohio River Valley. These are all these Great Plains people in Wisconsin kicked out.
How many you said earlier? You said a number of, like, how many
So
groups in the
there's the 5
hundreds.
civilized tribes, but there's more than 500 native tribes in America. I think 560 is
One's differentiatable.
is the one that's usually considered like the total. But there's no way of knowing how many were folded into other groups.
Right.
How many there were at one time. There could have been 6 or 7
They
major
didn't write it
ones.
down.
There are also big groups connected by like language, like the Algonquin. The Algonquin that's more of like a cultural ethnicity rather than a tribal nation because there's a lot of shared stuff, but it's like saying Eastern European.
Right.
Or Slavic. There's a bunch of Slavic nations. They speak similar languages. There's a lot like that throughout native culture. It's very fascinating. It's very diverse, and it is, I think, one of the great historical tragedies that it was so easily just wiped out and cast aside. This leads into that.
Okay.
Because in 1830, they passed this Indian Removal Act. It is not a mandate. It is not universally accepted. It is a 28-19 split in the Senate. So they don't have 100 Senate votes.
Yeah,
back
less
then. We
people.
have 50 states, less people. And it's 101-97 in the House. Very close.
That's very close.
Because North is very densely populated. They have more representatives per area. So it almost doesn't pass. It's really close. And it's very bitter feud. Because Jackson is like, look at the North and how they handled their tribal stuff. We're trying to do right by these people. And he refers to them constantly as savages. He never actually calls them people. Calls them savages constantly in his public addresses. And he shrouds it all in Christianity and good faith, saying this is for their own good because they're savage and their life here is just going to be miserable. He doesn't explain that their life there is going to be miserable because they're going to get killed. Because they're going to be brutalized by the colonial
We're going to make
concept.
their life miserable.
Because we're going to brutalize them. He just says, well, their lives are going to suck. He just ignores the why.
Okay.
They take different approaches to the 5 groups. Originally, they just say, hey, everybody move by, what is it?
Tuesday.
It's May 23rd, 1838. So they have
You got 8
8
years.
years to get out.
Get out.
This is not a huge problem for people with money.
Oh, no, turns out money solves lots of problems.
Turns out. So a lot of people are able to buy land,
Okay.
and then they just stay there.
Oh,
They
okay.
fully integrate. The people on what we would now call a reservation, it's not so easy. First of all, you have your tribal ties to your land. This is your land. You lived here forever. But grandfather's bones are here.
Yes, but we don't own it.
But we don't own it because we don't own the piece of paper. And we agreed. That's the most egregious
According
part of
to
this,
you, we
they
don't.
agreed to the rules to stay there.
Yeah.
And they changed the deal.
Change the rules.
They changed the rules. They changed the deal. They Darth Vadered them. So these different approaches occur. And I'm going to go down the list for the 5s.
Sure.
First, I'll end on a positive note. So we'll start with the horrifying tragedies. So what happens with the Creek? Their land is divided into plots, and they can stay and integrate and live on these plots, or they can sell their land.
Okay.
Right? Sounds good.
Good
right?
options. Yes.
White people are already living on the land, and they refuse to leave.
Oh, well.
So they can't live on the land, and they can't sell the land because they don't own the land. Remember that ruling?
Yeah.
So they're forced to move in a lot of instances because white people are already living on their land.
We're already
They've
here.
literally walked in, built a building, pointed guns outward and said, we're staying here. And then natives who own this land now are like, but we want to stay. We're following the rules. And they say, nope, we moved here. Too bad. And they try to appeal to the government. They say, too bad. Deal with it. Go on your merry way. You get all this land west of the Mississippi. Now it's all garbage. It's unsettled. There's the Dust Bowl. There's all these other things going on over there that we don't know about. Oh, and don't forget, people already live there.
Oh, that's right.
You have an entire half a continent on that side of the river
much
that
do
is
we-
already peopled.
Yeah. How much do we know about west of the Mississippi at this
A
time?
lot.
Okay.
I mean, the Spanish live on the whole coast.
Yeah.
And there's all of this contact with these tribes. They've had people scouting this for decades. They know there's people there.
But we don't care.
This is where the Plains people live.
Yeah.
And they're not just cool with people moving in. And it's a totally different culture. Plains
I would imagine,
Indians, that whole concept of the Plains Indians, they are nomadic, follow the herd, live on the land.
Yeah.
And they have a very fragile ecosystem going where they know exactly how many of the herd they can kill and what land is good land at what time of year. And now you're going to throw 60,000 people that way.
Yes.
And just go.
Who don't know what they're doing.
Who have no idea what the land is.
Yeah.
They don't know where anything is. They don't know where the safe water holes are. It's just like the frontiers folk, but worse because these people aren't choosing to go.
Right.
So they're woefully underprepared, a lot of them. All right. So the Creek have had their land divided. Some of them are able to stay.
Okay.
So a few of them stay
Figure it
behind.
out. Yeah.
Some of them are able to sell and move because they're like, I don't want to be here anymore. And
I'm feeling unwelcome.
I'm feeling unwelcome.
Go.
And then others have to face this illegal white settlement of their land, so they're forced to leave. Next, we have the Choctaw. And this is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. This is from George W. Hawkins, who's the Choctaw chief at the time, wrote a letter that was published to different newspapers, and it was to the American people. And it starts with him basically saying, I know I'm an ignorant, foolish savage, and I don't know any better. And it's in perfect English. And it's
Okay.
just self-deprecating. And he says, "We as Choctaws chose to suffer and be free than live under the degrading influence of laws, which our own voice could not be heard in their formation." So rather than be brutalized and forced to live in a situation where they'd be treated like second-class citizens at best, they just said, fine, we're not doing this. Because the alternative is war, and you'll win, and you'll kill us all.
Yeah.
So we're going to leave. And on their march west, that's when they referred to it as the Trail of Death and Tears.
Trail of Death and Tears?
Yep. I think it's Trail of Tears and Death is the order, and then they just abridged the concept of the Trail of Tears. Because it wasn't just death, because some of the people survived.
Sure.
But when thousands of you die, it's...
Yeah.
And it's this misery, this hardship, this...
I thought perhaps there was another Trail of Tears.
No, Yeah, there's the Trail of Death and Tears, which is slightly different than there's the Trail of Tears. There's two... There's
No,
levels.
they're the same thing.
No, it's the same exact concept.
Okay.
So they leave, and it's estimated that between 2,500 and 6,000 Choctaw die on the march. It's not good. I'll go into the exact numbers at the end because I have them because
Which is getting close.
it's important. Yeah. Then there's the Chickasaw. They are offered money,
Okay.
$530,000 to move. It's $13 million by today's thing. They take it.
Okay.
They see how everybody else is dealing with this and they're like, nope. This is garbage. We'll take the money and run. We'll take it. They take the money and they move almost as a people. They take their time moving so that they don't overwhelm anything.
Sure.
And then once they get across the river, they merge with the Choctaw and they are a united people.
Okay.
They obviously have their own problems during the march.
Sure.
And it takes years and years and years to do. But also, this is a serious depreciation of land value. $530,000 for like millions of acres of land.
Yeah.
Is nothing.
Probably
It's
nothing.
pennies.
Yeah.
The Cherokee get the worst end of the stick in a lot of ways.
I thought we were getting good news further along we went.
I said we get good news
Oh,
last.
okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the Cherokee, the most civilized of tribes, they're, I think the largest group that is forced to move, they encounter problems immediately, and they have a more northerly route. So it's cold. They're like in Illinois and Iowa.
Oh.
Part of their journey is on the river. It freezes.
Yeah.
They're stuck on a river.
And they're not used to the
They're
cold
not
in
used to
general.
that much cold.
Okay.
So they talk about things like, this is the most cold that I've ever had to deal with. I don't know how to handle this. What do we do? The ferries, normally they start charging natives $25 a head to move them across the river. Normally it's $3.
They saw a need and priced accordingly.
It's only for the natives.
I'm sure that's what they
just
told themselves.
Yep, that's what they told themselves. They up the ferry prices.
Yeah.
And it delays their move. So they're stuck on the wrong side of the river where it's cold and in growing clumps of people.
Yeah.
Cholera is a problem at this time. It starts to sweep through the camps. People die. Horrific racist practices where, as they're moving through, people just kind of grab them and kill them. Because they can.
No, they've been given permission.
They basically have been given permission because when people take it to the law, they say, all we want is just to be able... They sue basically just for the cost of burial. That's all they want.
Yikes.
They don't actually ask for justice. They just want enough money to cover funeral expenses, which is in modern cash about $800. That's all they want. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
They don't even say, we expect you to find the guys who did this. They know they won't. They know they aren't going to take the effort. They know they won't take the time.
Justice will not be.
There will be no justice, but at least we can give them a proper funeral.
Right.
Finally, we come to the Seminole.
Hey, the good
Harumph.
news.
The second people try to tell them they have to move, they tell them to bugger off.
Okay.
And they basically say, if anybody wants to make us move, you better come armed. So they do.
All right.
A contingent of more than 100 soldiers is sent into Seminole territory, and they are surrounded. And what happens is called the Dade Massacre, and more than 100 American soldiers are butchered by these guys as they try to come into their territory and take their land. There is a 10-year war with the Seminole, and they win.
How are they fighting? What are they fighting with? Do they have
They
guns?
use muskets. They use more traditional weaponry. They stage a guerrilla campaign throughout the Everglades and these swamplands throughout Florida that they've lived in for forever.
I believe I've learned something about previous Scottish history. Don't fight in a swamp.
Don't fight in a swamp. It's the worst place to fight a battle. And these people live there. That's all they do is live in the swamp. And there's no like amphibious assault. There's no huge plans. And at first it starts as like little fights and little raids and little things to try to mess with the Seminole, and they won't have it. They just
Good for you,
they
Seminole.
go all out, and then they start pushing out and raiding people, and they're like, if you're going to bring the war to us, we're going to bring it to you.
Well, we'd like at least a little boundary.
Eventually the government just says in 1842 they say enough is enough. This war has cost us $20 million, which in modern money is $500 million. It's $563 million.
10 years.
In 10 years spent on just this while they're trying to do all this other stuff throughout the country. And this is not the modern amount of money that we are used to in America. This is a growing nation. And when people find out how much the war cost, they're just like, this is done.
Well,
We're not doing this anymore. To this extent, the Seminole are the only people that were told to leave and didn't. That's their claim to fame. Is that the Seminole of the Everglades have been told to leave and they never left, and they actually had it put into like federal law. They get to stay.
Good
So
job,
the Seminole
All right.
fought this off. What this directly leads to
Yes.
is over the next 10 years is the Trail of Tears. This also leads to the Plains Wars, which last for a very long time. You hear about Custer's Last Stand. That was during the Plains Wars with the natives. You have 60,000 natives who were shifted forcibly out of their land, despite being told, well, we paid them. The alternative was, we'll take it. That's not a choice.
That is not. Yes. Well, it is. But
It's like the same as the draft choice. Go to war or go to jail.
Yeah.
That's not a choice. So that's what we have with that.
Well, there you go.
So we're gonna I'm gonna read the numbers
Okay.
because
Then we're gonna wrap it up. We gotta wrap this
time
up.
is up. But,
Time's up.
So the Choctaw population before removal was 19,554 people plus white citizens of the nation, 500 slaves. Then the major emigration is in 1831. Total removed are 15,000 people, and the deaths during removal are 2,000 to 4,000 plus due to cholera. 5,000 people were allowed to stay. For the Creek, they had 22,700 plus 900 black slaves. 19,600 were forced to move, and 3,500 died of disease after removal. There's also the War of the Creek during 1836, where we're not sure how many of them died during that. The Chickasaw had 4,914 people and 1,156 black slaves, and they were forced to move, over 4,000 of them. 500 to 800 died. The Cherokee had 16,542 plus 200 married white, and 1,592 slaves, and 16,000 were required to move. Only 1,500 stayed behind, and 2,000 to 4,000 died. The Seminole had 3,700 to 5,000 plus fugitive slaves. They didn't have as many slaves. They, I think, freed their slaves during this because they just wanted to not be moved. They were told they had to leave. Total of almost 4,000 were forced to be removed. None died during their removal because they stayed put and fought, and 700 died during the Seminole War. So that's our totals is anywhere it's 2,000 to 4,000 plus 3,500, so we'll say up to 7,500 plus 800 more, that's 8,300.
Okay, you're over time here.
12,000 people at a high end is what's estimated were killed during this. It's a lot of people.
A lot of
died.
people.
A lot of people died
Just to get some land.
just to get some land. So that's what happened with the Indian Removal Act, and then it caused a lot more laws. It basically made it okay to make laws like it.
And has since not lessen the tensions between people.
Nope. Things got a lot worse before they got not better than it was before, but better than the worst times.
Well, we're currently not invading each other
That's good.
currently.
That's good. That's
All right.
That's an improvement over the way it was.
Well,
So
not all of history is fun to look at or prideful for your own country.
Nope.
And sometimes, but you got to look at the bad to appreciate the good.
We're not saying you have to feel bad for like guilty because you weren't there. But you should understand the pain and the suffering that people have gone through as a people. I think that's really important.
And the ramifications which continue forward to today.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yay.
Yay.
We're going to move on to back to Europe next week.
Yeah, we're going back to Europe, but we're going forward in time.
So, next week we'll be discussing D-Day, which I've heard of as well.
Yep.
That was 1944, June 6th.
Well, kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So you can check that out next week and like and subscribe to this one. Thanks for joining us here. You got anything else to add there, Will?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I'm,
good.
this is my angry one.
Well,
That's it. That's
not
all I
all
got.
history is going to make you happy.
No,
So,
no.
thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
we hope you
guys.
learned something. Bye.
Bye.